Merhaba tekrar, hepinize günaydın.
Hello once again. Good morning. Welcome to the second day of our Coexistence Festival. Yesterday we had a series of conversations here in this hall, the role of culture and arts, AI and human rights, poverty and social injustice, and how to combat thereof is what we discussed yesterday. And in the first session today, we will be talking about grassroots civil society organizations, movements, and movements of solidarity, especially in restricted areas. We will be talking about what it feels like to be an activist and how these organizations can exhibit solidarity with one another and with other international institutions. And we will be also talking about how to achieve sustainability in solidarity. We will be talking about local authorities, public policies, and Ulaş Bayraktar will be with us. And from lectivaT, social studies specialist Özgür Güneş Öztürk, and from Justice Defenders, Saidi will be joining us. The moderator of our session is one of the founders of Postane, urban developer and social entrepreneur Yaşar Adanalı. Hello and welcome. We would like to thank the Hrant Dink Foundation for bringing us together. Apologies, but there's a problem with the microphone and we wait for this problem to be solved. So we will be talking about grassroots movements, and we will also be talking about civil society organizations and how they are linked with civil society organizations. And we will also be talking about access to financial resources, opportunities and problems in that domain. We have three esteemed guests, but let us kick things off with a general question, shall we? When we talk about grassroots initiatives, what do we understand and how do our panelists think of this concept of grassroots movements? And within the civil society, what is it that makes them different? In the face of institutionalism, is there a resistance or is this a political preference? And I'd like to ask Ulaş first. Hello and thank you. Here's how I'd like to begin. For those who cannot see us right now, here's a visual description of who we are. I'm almost 50. I'm 175, and I'm 75 kgs. I'm wearing a checkered suit and a pair of jeans, a checkered shirt and a pair of jeans. And I also am wearing the spot lanyard with 7 colors of the rainbow. And I am a merchant, so that's how I'd like to do things, sort of, promote myself and promote what I wear. Anyway, grassroots movements, actually, this is a bit like the local press. When you're a journalist in Istanbul, you're a journalist. But when you're a journalist in Mersin, down south, you are a local journalist. And grassroots movements are actually, organizations that have sort of been sidelined, but people who got together to actually focus on an important issue. And this is what we call grassroots movements. So when we talk about civil society, it's not a monolithic structure. There are grassroots organizations, and then, sadly, there's a hierarchy. There are certain organizations that are higher up on the hierarchy of civil society, and obviously, grassroots movements are actually organizations that exist with their target audience, not for their target audience. Yesterday, I think we talked about how we can appeal to the target audience, how we can convey our messages to them. But grassroots movements, I think, are organizations that embody within themselves their target audience. So I had 3 minutes, that's why I had to be fast. All right.
To you, Karen, how do you define grassroots organizations? Taban örgütlerini sen nasıl tanımlıyorsun?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a pleasure to be here. As the moderator highlighted, my name is Karen Saidi. I come from Kenya, but I'm Ugandan by choice because that's where I work and impact people's lives. As highlighted, I represent justice defenders, and to us, as an organization, a grassroots organization is one that begins from the bottom, from the community. That's what we look at it. Margaret Mead highlighted that never doubt that a small group of thoughtful people, committed citizens, can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. Basically, we associate with Margaret Mead's quote because we look at the power that a group of people have in a community, because we know that they are united with a common interest, and through the common interest, a social movement comes out of it, whether it is fighting for inequalities or pushing for justice, as Justice Defenders does. So in short, that's what I look at, and as what the organization looks at as grassroots organizations.
Thank you Karen. Üçüncü konuğumuz Zoom üzerinden.
Our third guest will be joining us via Zoom, and Özgür Güneş Öztürk is their name. We can't see her. Yes, we can see her right now. Hello. Hello, everyone. How are you? Hello and welcome. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. Were you able to hear the question? No, not really, but I had an inkling. You're in Catalonia, where which is a rich part of the world for grassroots movements, I think. How would you describe grassroots movements or initiatives, and what sort of a process do they embody? What would you say? Now, organizing on a grassroots level, simply put, is actually a social movement, as the name implies. It's all about bringing people together from the local level, from the community level. It's about people getting together and taking action, and obviously a social transformation is what is aimed at here. And at the same time, on a smaller scale, these movements aim at achieving perhaps smaller scale social changes. Now, let us continue with you. These grassroots organizations, movements, and financial resources, these are important topics, and usually allocators of resources are not at the local level, right? So there's a gap, there's a divide between grassroots and powers that be, people who make decisions. And sometimes, what happens is, on a global scale, people on the grassroots level are criminalized for their activities. And when we think of financial resources, can this be part of an alternative economy? Ulash, talked about his pair of jeans, and it was from a fair trade organization. So actually, we can perhaps conceive and establish an alternative economic model when we also talk about allocation of resources. In terms of access to financial resources, what do you think should be done? Thank you. I wasn't able to listen to Ulash or his introduction, but actually this is quite a complex issue. I mean, I am one of the founding members of lectivaT collective, and I study solidarity economies in Catalonia. But when we look at social movements, we cannot relegate them to solidarity economics only. So perhaps I should tell you about two distinct examples to answer this question. Well, social movements, their access for them to have access to social financial resources, there are three impediments. One is the bureaucracy. They need to be part of the bureaucratic framework, because financial resources actually, when it comes to the change that we want to achieve, or the result that we want to achieve, be it services or goods that we want to sell, goods that we want to be traded in the market, regardless of what sort of market it is. So it could be the market of solidarity economics, or it could be the general markets. So you need to come up with a project. You need to sort of demonstrate what you want to do if you'd like to get these financial resources. And obviously, this sort of may pose an impediment for the components of these movements. You are bound by bureaucracy, by red tape, and that's impediment number one. And impediment number two is institutionalization. You need to be a legal entity, you need to be an association, a cooperative, or a foundation, and being institutionalized, becoming more institutional, may yield positive results, but on the other hand, it may sort of cause us to exercise self-control and sort of make us a part of the mechanism that we criticize. And also, when you become institutionalized, what happens is you are affected by other sorts of implications of institutionalization, such as at the stage of production. If at the same time you if your livelihood depends on this production, then there are certain costs, certain expenses, and certain boxes that you need to tick, and this actually pulls you into the vortex of capitalistic production, and maybe you never leave that vortex at all. I mean, as someone who's been involved in a cooperative, I tend to think that that is the case. And also exploitation of labor. You become a part of the process of exploitation of labor because if you try to get financial resources, and if you want to accelerate your social project or social transformation, if you want to render it acceptable for or suitable for financial resources, then you need human resources as well, because you need people to work to that end. And then you need to hire people, and then you become involved, you become implicit in the exploitation of labor. You reproduce exploitation of labor. And actually there are three problems, these three issues that makes this thing really complex. And I'd like to briefly answer your last question as well. Being in pursuit of a financial resource, portraying it in a negative light or criminalizing it, this is something that we discuss here all the time. And maybe this is not really widely used in Turkey, and I've been living outside Turkey for 14 years now. And obviously, I keep an eye on what's been going on in Turkey, but I don't live in Turkey. And it's like monotheistic religions. There's a moral dominance imposed by monotheistic religions. And the reason why I say this is because, well, on the one hand, we feel as if we're compelled to achieve social transformation. And, we work for social transformation as grassroots movements and as components of such movements. And at the same time, we do this. We expect people to do this in a voluntary capacity, and that's a moral sort of imposition on people. Many people do not have financial expectations from these endeavors, but at the end of the day, we all need to make a living. And none of us have the luxury to not care about making a living. So this is a bit of an imposition that we need to acknowledge, especially in left-wing movements. Within left-wing movements, I think this is something that we have got to think about. I mean, there are such accusations all around us, and we need to tackle that. And I think this is an imposition created by monotheistic religions, and in a way, I would think that this is something that this is like a moral imposition that we are faced with, that we are confronted by, and that's one thing that we need to recognize as well. And also, if you need to draw up a project to get hold of financial funds, financial resources, what happens is there are certain mechanisms that you are bound by, and obviously we cannot reject these funds entirely. We cannot reject drawing up projects to do that, and that's a futile point of view. It's very either or, and if we want funds to realize what we want to do, why shouldn't we get those funds? And if we get these funds, how do we still preserve our integrity? That's the question that we need to ask, and we need to exhibit a bit of resistance, I think. Thank you. This was great. And Ulaş, let us get back to you. You said that you're a merchant, but you're a civil entrepreneur, if not a social activist. So what would you like to say about access to resources and lack thereof? Now, I am a peace academic. I was expelled from the university in Turkey in my previous life. I was a scientist, I was a researcher, and I was labeled as a project functionary at the time. And after our expulsion from university, we all had to sort of engage in projects. We all became project functionaries, and that is still being debated. Some people think that this is beneath them, and when I was an academic, I was at peace with drawing up projects, and now I'm trying to make peace with being a business person. Let us assume that we're all merchants. I mean, in Turkey, the opposition is being in the opposition is seen as a heroic effort. People are expected to work tirelessly day and night, and they're expected to give from themselves. And just like Güneş has said, 100% dedication is expected of you, and if you're remunerated in return, then you should be ashamed of yourself. And on social entrepreneurship, there was this focus group meeting that I attended recently, and everyone was saying we are a not-for-profit organization, we're not for profit, but I am for profit. Maybe I don't make a lot of profit, but I mean, theoretically, I should be for profit. It's not like I want this profit to further my self. But we should be unapologetic about making a profit. I mean, it's not like you're going to get a grant and spend it all in a nightclub. I mean, if you're going to use that grant for the social good, then you should be unapologetic about that. But on the other hand, there's one more thing, which is this, like all of this process, throughout this process, Ibrahim Betil also talked about the importance of transparency. So when you receive funds, you need to be 100% transparent. We received a fund recently, and our accountant said that when tens of thousands of euros was deposited into our account, our accountant was a bit startled, and you need to explain to people what you do with this money. You need to be 100% transparent, like I said. You need to explain to people what you're setting out to do. And if we're not transparent, then people get dubious, and people like to be dubious and have these second thoughts about what you do. Yes, we're together, we're doing this and that, but during the coffee break, people might gossip about one another and one another's organizations, even now, even today, because we're going through difficult times. We're under a lot of oppression. There's this huge oppression. But obviously, we cannot hold accountable the perpetrators of this oppression. So we try to take it out on one another, and people accuse one another. Oh, this guy gets his money from Soros, and this and that. So there's this resentment, and there's great injustice as well. And and people get jealous. And when you're successful with your project, you are awarded another project, and that might cause resentment in other people and fund providers. and there are many fund providers here, so I'm not going to say anything bad about them, obviously, and shoot myself in the leg. But you know, fund providers are a bit like banks. Banks exist to extend loans, but they do not extend loans to everyone. And fund providers exist to provide funds, but they cannot provide it to everyone. And when they find a suitable recipient, a suitable debtor, they'd like to continue to work with them, and that creates resentment in other creditors, in other debtors.
Yani orada bir anda
And this would only widen the gap, the inequality widens further, and then you start to question yourself, your own project, why your project has not been awarded. Of course, the others would be awarded anyways, so you start to find yourself asking all these questions.
Defenders access to funding? Do you find difficulties?
To start with, it's around the world, funding has significantly reduced across all sectors, but the sector that has been hit the most is the legal sector, which has significantly seen the funding dwindle quite significantly over the years. If you follow the developments in the UK, we are seeing that legal aid has been cut across the world. Basically, you're seeing that there's a lot of cuts around legal aid, meaning who it's affecting are the most vulnerable people in the communities across the world. And this hasn't been far from ourselves as well. In Uganda, we initially started as a grassroots organization. As I highlighted at the start, it was a common interest. We spoke to the people on ground who our common interest was the prisoners, spoke to them, learned of their needs, and slowly started a briefcase organization at that point. And it was quite difficult at the start because then you had to get buy-in of different stakeholders who control the industry, not only funders, but government as well. And it was a lot of convincing and involvement of those stakeholders in our work. So once you do that, at that point, then you get the buy-in of the main people who are going to then talk to other people who will enable you to get some sort of funding. I would say generally the biggest challenge that we currently face, even having passed the grassroots level, is, as our first presenter highlighted, bureaucracy. Even as we try and apply for local funding that is available within the country, we find that within the institutions themselves that provide those grants, you have to know someone in that institution that is going to introduce you to the people who make decisions, and then they will guide you on how to properly present your proposal. So that is something that it's the same thing that affects us as well. Other than that, definitely there's government scrutiny. As a partner, because we work with the government, there are some grants that we are not inclined to apply for because we are likely to be labeled in a certain way and lose our partnership with the government. So we do a lot of consultations to ensure that we are working in the right direction so that we serve the masses, who are basically the people within the prisons. How we've gone around to mediate some of these challenges and continue to exist even in the midst of COVID was that we use the reach one, teach one approach, where we use social media, we used actual alternative media to reach out to individuals. So our major interest group, or the major people that support our work, are actual individuals and not institutions. That is the strange element. People are more interested in the common cause when you are able to speak to individuals of something that is lacking within the prison. Maybe we are saying the prisoners do not have soap, and you're using a story, you're highlighting the actual raw story to an individual. The individual is more inclined, without the use of bureaucracy, without the use of a lot of elements of jumping over. The individual is more inclined to support your cause without questions asked, without demanding a lot of accountabilities or reporting. The whole element is, as the second presenter highlighted, is for you to be transparent, to use your story to reach to the different individuals in the community, whether they are rich or poor. Whatever that they contribute has a way of impacting an organization.
Thanks a lot. Would you like to continue on the details of what your organizations do as well?
Thank you. To explain what Justice Defenders does, I'll ask the team to present the video.
We believe that everyone should be treated equally in the hands of the law, regardless of their circumstances, or their income, or their personal background. We'll have just and fair societies when each person knows that the law is for them. That the law is something that they can understand and be part of. After more than 10 years of establishing prison libraries and clinics and working to improve healthcare and education, we asked, why is it that the prisons we work in are filled with poor people without access to lawyers? We saw whatever we did to improve their conditions, if they didn't feel they had justice, they wouldn't have peace. So we've shifted our focus. Now we train prisoners and prison officers as paralegals and put them through University of London law degrees, following in Nelson Mandela's footsteps.
Education, very important. It empowers you. You know, right now when I'm going through this paralegal training, I know my rights, and nobody can infringe that right, because I know this is what I'm supposed to get, this is what I'm supposed to do.
So even if you don't know your own constitution, how can you be able now to understand how to do your own case in court? So that's the pandemic that you are facing. And thank God, with the enlightenment that we have now, I'm now aware of my rights. I'm now aware how I should do my case. I'm now aware how I should help out another person in his matter.
I did my diploma, I finished. I enrolled in 2014, and I finished my diploma, and now I'm pursuing my law degree.
It's impossible to do this work without our financial supporters. In investing in this community, in helping to secure fair hearings and justice for those who don't know where to turn, you'll be changing families and lives for generations to come.
Thank you. I hope we've learned something, even as I transfer to the next, to the moderator. One key element from our video is that we work with the community, we work with everyone. We work with the prison officers, we work with the prisoners themselves, we work with judiciary. We believe that we can only be able to meet the vision of the organization and change the society by working together, by collaborating, so that we are able to pass the message further. We believe that that prison officer who we might ignore is likely to negotiate with the judiciary or a magistrate in court where we are not there, for them to look at a prisoner's issue more leniently. So we work with this, within the systems, so that we are able to transform the system itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Belki Özgür Güneş...
Perhaps we can turn to Özgür Güneş right here. We can continue with your experience about the cooperative lectivaT. How does it feel to be a grassroots organization or a lectivaT? Because when we look at it from here, our initial perception would be everything looks perfect. Well, in our case, perhaps it will be way too much to say that our organization is a grassroots initiative. Well, of course, we come from the grassroots, There are 4 or 5 founders. We now have 3 of our founders currently are the members of the cooperative and also co-managers. It is not a very big cooperative, I have to say. There are some other larger migrant cooperatives established in Catalonia, in Barcelona. And by the way, I also forgot to mention one aspect about our cooperative. As you may remember, there was a certain movement in Barcelona by the people who expressed their discontent with certain issues, and they have a greater number of components. This also triggered some cooperatives established along the way, and it would be really good to observe this too. Karan has told about justice defenders. I believe we were established around the same time to work on rights-based cause, but indeed we're not really working or focusing on rights-based work, because we have 3 main pillars of our cooperative. First pillar is social research. Just as Ulaş has mentioned, I'm a researcher myself, researcher of social sciences. And it is quite difficult to work at a university in Catalonia. There are certain obstacles and mechanisms out there. Let me not get into that right now. But if you want to pursue academic research, you will find only very few organizations. So that's the reason why we felt the need to set up a cooperative to continue our social research. So this is our first pillar. And our second pillar is language services. We provide translation services. We teach Turkish language. One of our colleagues, Pelin Doğan, is a Turkish instructor. She also is a translator. For instance, we prepare subtitles for some films and documentaries across Catalan language, Turkish, Kurdish, and Arabic. And our third pillar is language technologies. Under that pillar, we devise some tailor-made technologies for minority languages. And we talk about social justice and global justice. So these are our main points of sphere. We are trying to contribute to that 2 spheres through working with minority groups who were actually made a minority group within the society, and we are trying to provide them with some instruments, some tools, and some services that they can use. And of course, these instruments, they come thanks to the findings of the social research that we conduct. So we are relying on the know-how. We are now working on Ladino language. For instance, now we have an automatic translation system or sound synthesization system. We also have another language mostly known to be used by the Barbary community in Africa. This is a stateless community. So we would like to assist them by means of technology and to protect them against discrimination. Likewise, we also work on the Catalan language. We fundraise for that purpose. We submit our applications to some grant-making organizations in different countries. There's a short movie shot by a Kurdish producer. So it's a short movie in Kurdish language, and we would like to have its subtitles in Catalan language. And it gives us the feeling that through this way we can also contribute to this linguistic diversity. How about lectivaT? I mean, how could you add yourself to this sphere through your contribution? Well, since we were dismissed from the universities in 2017 through the state of emergency decrees, we were indeed expelled from a public sector to another public sector. This is how I define it. But I believe we were the most privileged ones through that process, because we have a cultural capital, we have a social capital, we had our passport, so we could travel anywhere in the world. So we were in a way rather privileged, but at that time our initial psyche was that, okay, we will stay, we need to roll up our sleeves and we need to stay here. Age quod agdis is a Latin phrase which translates as continue what you are doing. So our initiative is not a form of resistance as such. It is rather a matter of continuing what we have been doing, even though we had this huge blow on our activities. So this was in a way a micro-initiative to create a space whereby we can create a collective. And this was our initial dream. And we really wanted to make it public so that our collective becomes a public sphere in its own right. So we need to indeed make sure that a public sphere is indeed a social sphere. So this entails being in touch with different segments of society. Güneş'in Oya Aydemiş, I'd like to mention her. She writes a lot about the compost method, and I find it truly inspiring. Well, she says that we are now living in the age of decay or decomposition. Everything is in decline. So there is this decaying process, and as a result, we see waste coming out, and in an acidic environment it would smell badly, or the second alternative is that it will end up being a natural fertilizer, so it will go back to the earth. And in this compost theory, she talks about diversity. So the more diverse the organic substance in the soil, the better the quality of the fertilizer. Then there should be some circularity. There should be a circularity so that the waste will not remain in a concentrated form in this acidic environment, but it will be released out of this environment in this circularity. And then our target group, our donors always ask us this question: okay, you have a library, are you targeting young people? Are you talking about justice in a public space, or are you working with migrants? So they keep on asking our target group, but we don't have any specific target group, because our ultimate aim is to build a community. And we work on ecology, on gender equality, we did composting activities. So our aim is to bring everyone to our venue. And the circularity. is also important because we want to create our own story, because everyone is asking if we serve smuggled tea at our venue. And I then try to convince people that why don't you join us first so that we can discuss about this. So our first tote bags were produced by Kazova, another collective. So we supply our, let's say, butter from some other friends who are running a collective. But of course, at the end of the day, we also have to go to a metro market chain to buy the things that we need. In my dissertation, I received a guide book about Sivas province. So it was a guidebook that included the plumber in Sivas, or the even the circumcision expert. So all the local professionals in Sivas were listed in this guide. So if we can have a list of locally sourced collective producers, then this would be really helpful. So we are doing our best to also support the others. We have so many friends who come by to our venue. And for instance, Ahmet Yeşil donated 5 of his paintings, and we also sold them out. We also use Patreon and others. So, by the way, I forgot to mention, Kültürhane, our venue, is a cafe with a library. I wish we could also show our video. No, thanks for telling us. So, you are talking about diversity, you bring together activists in a space, and all of us as activists getting into this compost container and coming out through its natural circularity. So this was a very good illustration. Perhaps our panelists have questions to one another. I really value our coexistence here. We are here together, and we also have this motto, we are here, Parik, in memory of Hrant Dink. So we are now here in Istanbul, and we all know one another in a way, but it was very valuable to come together, to share what we do at local level. All these encounters, all these exchanges are very valuable. I mean, unless otherwise, we all have our social media accounts, but we try to find our way in this darkness. But these kind of gatherings are quite important, and I would like to thank all the organizers. I think it will be very important to continue such gatherings. Actually, we're not ending yet, not concluding yet. We will still have some time for Q&A.
Merhabalar. Pardon. Ben Özgür.
Now, I think what Özgür said carries a lot of weight, and here's what I felt. When it comes to the civil society, when we tackle the issue of voluntary work, how it's always demanded and expected and seen as an obligation, I think it's like a heart in a heartless society, right? Because maybe not because of the oppression, but maybe to respond to what religion responds to in people, and not just by giving. I mean, only God gives without taking. Us human beings are not in that position, so that voluntary capacity is actually also a place where you receive. As much as you give, you get something out of the act of giving, and between what you give and receive, or striking a balance between the two, I think there might be a problem. So now, maybe religious inequality, capitalistic inequality, has sort of exploits the feelings of compassion, and this injustice is compounded as a result, and we are compelled to sort of receive less in exchange of what we give. And I think perhaps our institutions, our organizations, or us becoming institutional can be thought of in this context, because yes, there might be, we don't need to mimic a company or a religion, but maybe we need to see these organizations of places of compassion, and maybe, you know, we need to think of these places as places of institutionalized compassion. And I think this is quite intangible, but I think this is something that we need to contemplate. Yes, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you. Thank you very much. This wasn't a question, but a comment. Would you like to comment on this, or did? No, this wasn't a question. I just wanted to offer you my additional comment based on what you have said. But I'd be happy to hear what you think of this. Thank you. Now, any other questions, any other additional comments?
Thank you so much. Everyone has shared such interesting and unique work experiences and efforts you're doing. I wanted to just mention that, you know, we talk a lot about the challenges that grassroots organizations face, and I've been there as well, and I know how challenging a lot of it can be. But I wonder if you might all comment briefly on some of the added value that being a grassroots organization can have to your work. Because there is a unique space that grassroots organizations fill. They can help create better trust with their beneficiaries and a lot of other areas. So maybe you would want to share a little bit about how it might have supported the work that you do instead of only creating challenges.
Yeah.
Our community center, Kültürhane, is an island of hope, as we call it. And despite all the challenges, we demonstrate to people that it is possible to get together, join forces, and do things together, share things, and put things to practice. And this gives us heart. This is pleasurable, and this gives you a lot of peace as well, peace of mind. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it, right? Otherwise, it's too cumbersome a work. I mean, I was asked recently, what is the one problem that awaits you next year? And I said, paying the rent. And the roof is leaking, and you know, the kettle is broken, and we're all treacherous. We're labeled as treacherous people in this country. Many people blame us and tell us that we're not left-wing enough. So we are accused left and right. But for 5 years now, nevertheless, we have kept our community center alive, and that gives us hope. And the fact that people convene in that space, and sometimes when you tell people that this place might shut down, people get heartbroken, and then they try and help you out to help you survive. And the fact that you can still, this against all odds, the fact that you can do things is a huge sense of satisfaction. Otherwise, you know, we don't line our pockets thanks to this community center. But it gives you a peace of mind. It gives you a sense of hope and purpose. Just like in that forest fire story, that wildfire story. I mean, there was a wildfire in the forest. All the animals were carrying water, and then there was this beetle carrying water. And then elephant said to the beetle, you know, you only carry so much. Why do you go into the trouble? And the beetle said, I'm carrying this, you know, water just to be on the right side. And this is what we're trying to do. Maybe it's a drop in the ocean, but nevertheless, we want to be on the right side. And we, you know, tell people that we're here to stay. Obviously, we're not saving the world. Obviously, we're not heroes. We're not here to make a revolution. We're not here to change things. And obviously I also wear clothes, perhaps made in sweatshops, but let's not get complacent. It's not like if you can't make a revolution, you should just stay silent. We're sowing seeds. We're sowing seeds, and one day these seeds will become trees. But even if not, we want to be on the right side of history. This may sound too sentimental, and I don't want that. But obviously, this is what we want to do, and we find meaning in what we do. And that's the advantage of being a part of grassroots movements. Anyone else who'd like to talk about the positives of grassroots movements? Yes, I'd be happy to. Actually, I agree with Ulaş, and we always talk about the same example within the cooperative. We work 10 hours a day. We've been working 10 hours a day in the last year. We're merchants, actually, but right now, for us, there's no other option. We wouldn't want to work somewhere else, do something else. And the same thing applies to other partners of our cooperative. And the reason why is because maybe it's political capital. It's not just a cultural capital, but a political capital that we put to use here on a personal capacity, doing this right here, right now, and engaging in this work. Not project, but being engaged in this work. Where else would I be? What else would I want to do? And the answer for me is quite simple. I'd like to be here and I'd like to do this, and that's why this gives me satisfaction. And obviously there are all sorts of large and small bureaucratic hurdles, and many difficulties that we face. That's number one. And secondly, on a social scale, here's what I could say. In a way, actually, there's a division of labor within the capitalistic society that we live in. The social order actually moves us away from our free will. And that's the main characteristic of this order, the social order. So within the cooperative, and as cooperatives, I think we offer the potential to people so that they can exercise their free will. Of course, being in a cooperative or solidarity economics are not going to replace the capitalistic society overnight or demolish the capitalistic order. Obviously, that's another discussion entirely. And hopefully one day we'll get to have that discussion as well. But on a smaller scale, actually, this is a true alternative that we are bringing to life. And that being the case, you give way to social transformations, or you prioritize certain social transformations, and that's the right question that we need to ask. So within a cooperative, you can do all sorts of things when it comes to services, when it comes to production of goods, but there's a political capital that we create as well. And you pick your side, just like Ulaş said. You accentuate the fact that you have made a choice, and you also demonstrate to people that it is possible, and you make it possible through your actions.
There are some things that can only be seen through the eyes that have cried. What do I mean by this? It means that the people on the ground are the ones who know what hurts them most. So for me, I look at an advantage of actually being grassroots based is that your programs are formulated around the needs of the people rather than what you think that is needed. And it's very important to be very brave enough to seek those answers from within the community. Sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. The answers are there, the solutions are there that are provided by the people. But you have to be humble enough to go to the bottom, sit with them and listen to them, because they are able to guide you and understand, and they understand how best to maneuver any likely challenges that you might even face at the top. Another thing is that you must be ready to work with others. You can't work in isolation. As a grassroots organization, your success is only you're only capable to be successful if you work with everyone from top to bottom, bottom to top, all the ways you should work with people, and you should be able to ask those hard questions at all levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Ulaş, bir şey
Evet, senin de bu soruya cevabını merak ediyorum.
I'm also curious about your answer to this question. Now, you said that your cooperative or your community center is an island of hope. Our initiative maybe is not exactly like that, but we want to share that hope as well. And that question about compassion is really important as well, I believe. Creating a compassionate realm in the face of all these difficulties in life, in the face of all this cruelty, that sense of compassion is really important. And to do this from bottom up is really important. And not just saying this, but translating this into action is also what we care about. Last 3 minutes. One last question or one last comment. Hello, Merve is my name, and I work with cooperatives also, but I have the following question. We've talked about solidarity economics, and we see communities that have sort of become like tribes that compete against each other, and that who create their echo chambers. And under the culture of solidarity, it's as if they manage their own processes. They act like tribes. They eat together, drink together, mingle together. Yes, this is a great model, but especially within the context of cooperatives, or as a critique of cooperatives. For instance, if this culture of solidarity maybe redesigned. Cooperatives of 20 years ago obviously was different than cooperatives of today. So my question is, how would you, if you had to, put forward a critique of cooperatives, what would you say? Or if you were to redesign this from scratch, what would you do differently regarding cooperatives? That's what I wanted to ask you. Thank you very much. This is quite a difficult question because yes, all formations by nature are emerge out of passivity, and that culture is part of that passivity. Designing something from the outset is not possible, or from scratch is not possible. I can only talk about Catalonia. It's the only solidarity economy that I'm familiar with. So what could my critique be? And actually I could say that, and here's what I could say, both inside and outside. Some people perceive cooperatives as a paradise. Once you establish a cooperative, it's as if you're part of hope, and you pick your side in an automatic fashion. You're at the right place. That's an illusion, and you need to get rid of that illusion. And personally speaking, when I decided to be a part of this cooperative, I didn't have this expectation. What I have come to realize is that cooperatives, people who become part of cooperatives, have that expectation, or they base their decision on that, and they are bitterly disappointed. You need to get rid of those dreams, those pipe dreams, and then if you can't if you fail, if you're bitterly disappointed, then you badmouth cooperatives, and that's not good, right? So this is what I wanted to say. We need to get rid of that mentality, unrealistic expectations. Thank you very much. We'd like to thank our panelists. We have come to the end of the time allocated to us. We'd like to thank the Hrant Foundation for extending an invitation to us. Have a lovely day, everyone. Thank you. Yes, we'd like to thank our panelists for their contributions, and we care about what you think. So please scan the QR code that you will see on the screen and fill out our assessment form. And the next session will start at 1 p.m. And the title of that session is Stories of Coexistence. And now is our lunch break. See you in an hour. Thank you.